participants. Welcome to Adopting Energy Management in Homes in Building webinar. I am Jeza Rodriguez from the Student Council Alliance of the Philippines, your moderator today. So I am sure that you are very excited to be here and learn from our expert resource person this afternoon. This webinar was crafted in order to identify practical steps on how to do an energy audit in your own homes, office, and buildings. And of course, you want to learn practical energy management concepts and energy conservation practices. So kung may mga kasama po kayo sa mga na-shock doon sa Meralco bills, I think this is a very good webinar for you. And before we dive into the discussion, I have a few reminders for everyone here in the Zoom room. So first, there will be an allotted time for questions and suggestions. So don't worry, there will be a chat box where you can drop your queries and just mention them. You can mention them in Filipino or in English. Second is that please ensure that your microphone is muted during discussions unless you were raising a question that has been acknowledged by the moderator. Third is that you make sure that your surroundings are also safe and secure. And lastly, we are glad to appreciate all your concerns, even if it's not related to the topic, but maybe more on the technical part. If nahihirapan po kayong marinig or makita yung presentation ng speaker, just message us in the chat box. So to officially welcome us in this webinar, may I call on Sir Riedo Panaligan, the President and Acting OIC of the Center for Renewable Energy and Sustainable Technology, who is also a climate and environmental activist who currently holds a leadership roles in different regional and local public networks. He is also a licensed engineer and currently taking his master's on green energy and climate finance in Berlin School of Economics and Law. So let's give a warm round of virtual applause to Sir Riedo.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Of course, we want to thank Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, one of our longtime partners, for their support. FES is the oldest German foundation and continues to promote the core ideas and values of social democracy, freedom, and solidarity. And of course, this webinar will not be in effect without also the sacrifices of our great leaders who just passed away this year. This is Engineer Roberto Bersoda. If you were joining us earlier, you saw his interview in one of the videos, and also former Secretary and Climate Commissioner Gerson Alvarez. And also, we would like to thank our host, Jeza. Jeza is the National Secretary General of Student Council Alliance of the Philippines, and we are very fortunate that she was able to join us despite this very busy schedule. Okay, during this COVID pandemic, with most of the families mostly stay at home, our electricity consumption shoots up. It is no wonder that our current electricity payment eats a lot of our monthly budget. And electricity also is a major overhead cost for many businesses and institutions. And that's the reason why practicing energy management today is very crucial. Aside from immediate savings, it also helps us reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and carbon footprint. And at the same time, it promotes sustainable lifestyle and practices. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our main speaker for today. He is a renewable energy technology and resource specialist. He's also managed various sustainable development projects on renewable energy and energy efficiency technologies and systems. He currently spearheads the Pico Hydropower Program of the Renewable Energy Association of the Philippines. And he is also a candidate for Masters in Energy Engineering at the University of Diliman. Erwin has been a long-time partner also of CREST. And without further delay, I would like to call our speaker, Mr. Erwin Serafica. Erwin, you have the call.
Yeah. Hello. Good afternoon to everybody. Yes. Actually, if you look at the situation now, um, it is not that what do you call this? It is not that bad per se, but um, we have to look at it at a point of or in the perspective of the people who are um, the residents who are using the energy. So um, we have tried to look at the cost of electricity from January until now. It is actually lower than what it was in 2019. But without further ado, I'll start the presentation. So I'll share my screen. Okay. So the presentation that I'll be giving is on energy management. Um, it is actually it takes into two forms. Energy management, from what we know, it's actually energy efficiency and energy technologies. It takes two forms. So um, energy management per se is the practice of doing actions or programs that can reduce your use of electricity or use of energy. So it does not mean that only it is for electrical power. It can also be used for transport. It can also be used for heating, cooling, etc. So any cost center that uses energy can be managed or controlled. So it is the practice of monitoring and tracking and controlling your energy usage. So energy efficiency, it's a little bit different. So we have to distinguish between the two or the three: energy efficiency, energy management, and energy conservation. So just to explain, energy management is actually the umbrella for the two. Energy efficiency is different from energy conservation, in the sense that energy efficiency takes into consideration the energy that you use, and it has to have a productive application after. So it is how much or how efficient or how well we use the input energy to produce the same amount of product at the same quality and at the same quantity. So if that's a, let's say, we're producing a bolt. So if we're producing a bolt and we're using like 1,000 kilowatts just to produce 10 bolts, if we can reduce our consumption to, let's say, 5 kilowatts, or a little bit less pa, mga 500 watts just to produce 10 volts, then that is a well thought out reduction in your cost of operations and cost of energy, but you still provide or you still give the productive application that you have. Energy conservation is the avoidance of using energy. So basically, you are not concerned with how much you are producing. You are just counting how much you avoid using. So when you turn off the lights, that's already conservation. When you unplug your TV after watching, that's already part of the conservation. So an example of, let's say, energy efficiency would be, um, if you replace your light bulbs, your former incandescent or CFL bulbs, with an LED bulb. For example, a 40-watt CFL bulb would only be equivalent to a 4-watt LED bulb at the same illumination, or it gives the same light. So you're only costing, or you're only using 4 watts instead of the former 40 watts. And you're getting the same, um, what do you call this, the same illumination or the same lighting. So that is to explain the terminologies of energy management, energy efficiency, energy conservation. So before we go into the nitty gritty of doing the energy audit, we have to look at what is the driver of energy consumption and supply. So basically, it's really the population growth and urbanization, and a rapid increase in the population. Yeah, in the population and the economic use that we have. So the more economic growth that we have, um, the more that the consumption increases. So we did a projection, or using data from the World Bank and from ADB. We are projecting that the growth rate from 2015 to 2035 would be around 1.34%, while the increase in the economic um, progress would be around 5% to 6.8%. So that's pre-pandemic. But now I think for 2020 it is very much below 1%. So we are expecting this to pick up by 2021 or 2022. So we shall see if the growth rate will still be sustained until 2035. But this is the pre-pandemic. The one that is shown in the slide is the pre-pandemic growth rate. So we have key issues affecting energy development. So we have our continuous dependence on fossil fuels, our climate change mitigation and adaptation imperative. We need to improve basic energy services, and actually the geography of the country matters a lot in terms of how we provide energy. But today, since we're dealing with energy efficiency, we just take the two key issues, so continued dependence and climate mitigation. So if you look at this slide, um, for the Asia Pacific region, coal is the predominant um, fuel that is being used to create or to develop or to produce electricity. So it is a dirty fossil fuel. There are a lot of environmental effects that can be or that is detrimental to the environment if you're using coal. So it's not just actually air pollution, but you also get water pollution from the flushing of the coal fired power plants. So um, predominantly, the Asia Pacific region has coal as its primary source of energy. So the dream or the target of most advocates for renewable energy and climate change is 100% renewable. So that expect that to come in the future, but gradually we will reach that goal. So in terms of install generation, as I said, um, we are stressing that it is coal that is predominantly there for our power generation. It is actually sad because I checked the 2018 installed capacity. We already had 31% for the RE share. However, for 2019, it became lower. It became 29% only. So it is only playing in that range from 27% to 30%. So from the time that the renewable energy law was passed in 2018, it actually went down. I have a slide that will show that. So this is the electric power generation. And this is the power generation mix. So the first one, the one in the slide before, it is the amount of power plants that are installed in the Philippines. So this one for this slide, this is the amount of electricity that is being generated, so per hour. So again, it's still coal. And again, the RE share is still lowering. It is getting lower. So right now it's 21.16%. Last year, I think it was around 24 or 25%. This is what the slide I was talking about. In terms of the capacity and the energy that was produced, from 2001, even if there was a renewable energy law, the share of renewable energy is going down. So in terms of energy that was generated in the amount of installed capacity. So basically, um, we are actually marching in place. Even if there is a law, we really need to improve our uptake of renewable energy in order for us to reach the target of 100% renewable and to lessen the impact of climate change that is very imminent in the very near future. So, in terms of the consumption, the residential and the industrial sectors in the Philippines are the ones that consume the most in terms of electricity. So, if each and every resident or each and every household can conserve or can lessen or have an efficient utilization of their energy, then this slide will change a whole lot because um, since residential is the most is the largest consuming sector in the Philippines, then if we lessen this, then there is a very big effect. Again, as part of our dependence on fossil fuels and the volatility of fossil fuels, the Philippines has the highest or one of the highest electricity rates in Asia. So I think in 2019 it was around 20 cents, US cents. So that's around 10 pesos. So a little bit lower than 10 pesos, 9.66 in 2019. So right now, for the Meralco franchise area, it's around residential rates around 843. So yung range that I have from 548 hanggang 1475, it depends on the area where you are in. So it is the distribution utilities price or selling price, yung 548 at saka 1475. The 1475, I think this is in, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in Mindanao. I think Surigao. And the 548, I think this is somewhere in the north, up north. I don't remember what view. So that's one of the reasons why our electricity bills are also very high. But if you compare this to 2018, 2017, our electricity rates in 2018 and 2017 were reached around 10 pesos, 9 to 10 pesos, and not 843. So it is actually very low now because we have a high supply due to the pandemic. There are no commercial spaces that are open. There are very little restaurants, very little hotels that are open, or it's not in full capacity. So that's why the cost is very a little bit lower compared to former years. In terms of climate mitigation, the Philippines is one of the signers of the Johannesburg and the Millennium Sustainability Goals. So we actually have to work towards the 1.5 degree Celsius target or the two degrees target of increasing energy or increasing global temperatures. So in terms of the contribution to CO2 emissions, electricity production and transport has the highest, or again, contribution in the country for CO2 emissions. So it's around 35% for electricity production and around 34.9% for transport. So a little bit. It's nearly the same. So in terms of the policy thrusts of the government, they want to ensure energy security and lessen dependence on renewables. So the emphasis is supposedly on renewable, on green resources. So I think uh, it is really I don't know how to say this, but um, uh, the government is actually doing a l- I don't know a very partial job of encouraging the uptake of renewable energy. So I think that's a little bit more polite way of saying it, but that they're not doing their jobs. But um, they are saying one thing and then doing another. So it is understandable that the government would say that yes, we have to support our basic economic progress through the use of energy. However, we can also do the same thing and support economic progress using renewable energy. Why not transition to renewable energy and just leave the fossil fuels alone? So that's one of the things that even if the government is saying that we would like to lessen dependence, we would use the renewable energy, it is actually a little bit different from what they're doing and from what they're saying. So another thrust of the government is the global climate and environmental concerns. They want to increase greater majority and they want to use creative and alternative solutions. So basically, energy efficiency would fall into that creative and alternative solutions. So this is again the policy thrust of the government, but this is specific for the Duterte administration. So the past regimes, the past presidents would have a different policy thrust and direction, but this is for the Duterte administration. So on the road to the Philippines energy efficiency and conservation targets, the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act was passed in April 12, 2019. So based on the roadmap that was done by the Department of Energy and in consultation with some private sector groups and some of the other sectoral groups, we can actually save 182 million tons of oil equivalent um, by 2040. So that is actually an equivalent of 726 billion US dollars in terms of savings and a deferred installation of a 45.9 gigawatt power plant. So we can prevent or not prevent, but we can defer or postpone the installation of 45.9 gigawatts of power plants that may or may not use fossil fuels. So it can lessen what do you call this CO2 emissions by 1.2 gigatons. We can have a slower rise in energy prices. We can increase our GDP because we are lowering the cost and lowering the demand for energy. We can increase green jobs. In what way? We need some what do you call it? Certified energy managers and certified energy conservation officers. So that's part of the green jobs as well. We can have more ESCOs, energy service companies that can provide energy efficient technologies and energy efficient consultant businesses. So it can provide green jobs as well. So we can also reduce our fossil fuel inputs. However, we need or the roadmap also tells us that uh, a capital expenditure or a capital investment of 243 billion US dollars would be required in order for us to gain all those advantages. So that is, I think, in terms of the incentives that are provided and for the support and the subsidies that can be given for energy efficiency and conservation projects. So what does the energy efficiency and conservation access say? Um, it actually mandates all government institutions to undertake energy efficiency and conservation targets, or to have, or to have energy management programs or actions. As I was saying, you have to have to a certified energy efficiency conservation officer. You have to have certified energy efficient or energy managers, accreditation of energy service companies. We can have or it mandates a minimum energy performance and appliance labeling. So for every appliance, for example, an air conditioner or a refrigerator, it has to pass through a minimum energy performance standard. So the numbers, or the what do you call this, the energy efficiency factor numbers that we see in our air conditioners and refs, are part of this. Actually, it is part of the performance labeling that the DOE is saying. So another part of or the mandates of the act is that the transportation vehicles and buildings, be it a public sector building or be it a private sector building, will be under scrutiny in terms of their energy consumption. So, to this effect, most of the buildings and most of the institutions have been assigned or have been mandated as designated establishments. So these are the ones, designated establishments are the ones who will be submitting what we call the energy consumption and conservation reports. Who will be doing these reports? The one who will be doing these reports are the certified energy efficiency and conservation officer and the certified energy manager. So for residential houses, or residential houses and other households, there is no need for any reporting that is to be done. However, if you are in a condominium unit, a large scale hotel, then these will be subject to the regulatory and policy and framework of the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. So, as part also of the act, in order to encourage people to have an uptake in terms of energy efficiency technologies, there are fiscal incentives and non-fiscal incentives that will be provided. So other features, there are now penalties if you do not follow the tenets of the minimum energy performance and the labeling, plus the submission of reports. Then there are now penalties that will be imposed on the establishments. So this is what I was saying. Again, just to reiterate. Okay. So with the recent passage of the law, we now join a league of nations that have been doing undertaking an energy efficiency law. In particular, for an example would be the United States. There have been studies in the United States that um, energy efficiency is actually making up 18% of their generation. So to speak, instead of them putting up a power plant, energy efficiency is actually doing that for them. It is deferring or postponing a power plant. So that leads us to the concept that due to the cost-effective and competitive nature of energy efficiency technologies and energy management, it is actually dispatched in the US as one of their first fuels. Kung we consider oil or coal as part of our fuel, we can also consider now energy efficiency as part of our fuel. So we manage energy use through a change in behavior and change in mindset. So to lower our energy consumption, it's actually a change in lifestyle. Major yung change in lifestyle. I think for the older generation, it was actually ingrained already in the older generation. So our parents would already turn off the lights, turn off the water, save plastic. Instead of throwing the plastic, we save the plastic for reuse. So it is actually already ingrained in the behavior of some of our of the older generation. Why? Because they have already passed through that energy crisis in the 70s, wherein all prices of petroleum products, which control plastics, which control rubber, have skyrocketed to a certain degree that there were already shortages. So I think in the use of electricity, we really have to learn, or we really have to understand that we have to change our behavior and our mindset. I think one of the things that we have to think about this is, um, if when we go on a vacation or a staycation, when we go into a hotel or stay in a hotel, what do? The first thing that we open in the hotel, we open the aircon at full blast. So we are not going to do this at home. We are paying for our own electricity. So basically, we will conserve our consumption. But if you're in a hotel, if you're in a restaurant, you just turn on all the air conditioning. You turn on the water. You take a bath in the bathtub. So you just don't take a shower, but you take a bath in the bathtub. So basically it is wherever we are, we should already be very we should think about the effects of what we are doing. So it means it should be ingrained in us that we should be conserving our resources already. So actually that concept um, that I mentioned, it's called in energy efficiency as the landlord and tenant effect. So the landlord is the one that's paying, but the tenant does not pay. So he will waste any of the resources or the energy or the utilities that are in that unit. So basically, it what we call this, it adds to the consumption that is being done by the or being paid for by the landlord. So in terms of opportunities to mitigate climate, if you look at this abatement cost curve, the ones in front here in this area, so it is retrofitting residential air conditioning, it is waste recycling, it is residential appliances as compared, let's say, to having low penetration wind, let's say having solar PV, it's here. So in terms of cost, the technologies that are the ones on top are the ones that have greater cost in financing. The ones in the bottom are the ones that provide technology options that are cost effective. So these technologies, the green uh, building technologies, are the ones that are actually very cost effective. So lighting is actually very cost effective. Putting insulation, efficiency improvements of industries, waste recycling, as I said, residential electronics, residential appliances are actually cost-effective solutions already, as compared to, let's say, building another power plant, even if it's solar or even if it's wind. So it's more cost-effective to do energy efficiency rather than add to the generation capacity. Also, I have to before I forget, I also have to say that um, we did not really follow the convention here in the Philippines uh, of energy efficiency and renewable energy development. So in other countries, most of the policies took into account energy efficiency first before they went into renewable energy. So they had to learn how to use their energy first, how to conserve their energy first before they went into renewables. Why? Renewables actually, if you do distributed generation or you do standalone generation, have a little or have a smaller capacity to provide power. So if you want to maximize that power, then you have to learn how to manage your load. So we did not learn how to manage our load first. We went into renewable energy, and a lot of projects at that time when the energy efficiency was not yet there yet failed because people were exhausted or exhausted of the technology because they thought that it could not provide for more power. For example, it could not power the refrigerators. It only gave them power for lighting, only gave them power for a transistor radio, and not for lighting, or for not for air conditioning, not for large TVs, not for bigger appliances, etc. So if would have learned to efficiently use what we were or what we are given in terms of energy, then we could maximize that power in order for us to um, save more money and then expand our renewable energy system. So that actually is the initial idea for that. So what are the benefits of energy efficiency? So in terms of cost, it lowers our heating and cooling bills. Since we are lowering our demand for energy, we have higher air quality. We have better mental health, no lesser stress. If we already ingrained that in our lifestyle, reduce chronic disease because we don't need to use our cars every time that we are going to move in 1 kilometer. Right now, we are learning that biking is actually a very good means of transport rather than using cars. So it is a transition towards a better and a brighter future in terms of our well-being, our what do you call this? Our climate imperatives. So in terms of other improvements, so there are actually other impacts as well. Our health, our macroeconomic impacts. There are public budgets would go into, or yeah, the government budgets could go into other social and economic programs rather than just putting it on energy, etc. So there are a lot of co-benefits in using energy efficiency and energy management. How do you finance energy management energy efficiency programs? So it can be self-financed. So you can use our own capital. If you're a household, you can use your own capital. You can change your own light bulbs. You can use inverter air conditioners. You can, what else? Get better windows. You can have uh, lesser or smaller um, electronics. So that you can actually we can do that. There are small programs that can be done for a household to self-finance. It can be debt financed. Also, you can get loans from banks that they can do their or that they can provide funding for programs such as, let's say, a rooftop solar PV installation. They can change, for example, you're a small business, you can change your pumps, you can change your drill presses, you can change your other technologies in order for these to be more cost efficient and more energy efficient. off-balance sheet investment. So ESCOs can provide a um, investment track. We have public and private partnerships and other portfolio investments. So other special market channels, there are programs by LGUs, funding from donors, performance contracts, etc. So I'm not going to go into this completely. So there are now a lot of programs. For example, Land Bank has its own window for energy efficiency projects. I think DBP also has energy efficiency projects as well. Um, so for the our audience that would like to participate or that would like to avail of let's say streetlights, DBP has a program to help LGUs in doing streetlights as part of their energy efficiency window for funding energy efficiency. So in terms of the audits, so what is an energy audit? So energy audit is to know how much that you are spending in terms of your energy, how much you are using. So are you using for example, you're using an aircon that has that is using 500 watts. How many hours are you using it? So if you multiply it, if I'm only using it for 2 hours, so you're using 1 kilowatt hour of energy already. So that um, is billed to you in your energy bill. So in an energy audit quantifies or it is the practice of inspecting, surveying, and analyzing the energy flows to identify possible energy savings opportunities in a building, in let's say a manufacturing process or a system. So as I said, it should not affect the quality or quantity of service, product, or the level of comfort of energy users. So um, I would also like to differentiate between the term service, energy service, and electricity. So electricity is the cost that the charges that we are paying it is electricity, but consumers buy electricity in order for them to um, support a certain service. So even if the electricity is costly, but we need that service. For example, we need to power a pump because we are manufacturing certain products that require a pump. Then the service that is provided is not based just on the electricity, but on the productive service of that pump. So if you're using that is the how we quantify or the metric that we quantify um, the productive use of energy that we have. So the scope and the level of detail of energy audits depends on what impact, what resources are available in terms of financial and in terms of equipment that will need to be improved, and the purpose for the output information that will be used. For example, you just want to lessen your electricity, your cost of electricity. So you can either do a change or replacement in your light bulbs, change in your inverter. But if you want to lessen your reduce your what do you call this, your emissions, so negligible the replacement of light bulbs may be negligible in terms of lessening your emissions, but it is in the cost. So in terms of doing um, for the purpose of uh, lessening your emissions, then something a bigger program would be maybe required for you to do that. So why do an energy audit? Why is it important? So it is the first step towards analyzing your energy usage, which in turn gives you direction on what you need to do next. So it identifies which equipment, which system is actually consuming more electricity. For example, compared to a laptop and a clothes iron or a water heater, which is more, which consumes more? It's the iron and the water heater as compared to the laptop. So basically, you can reduce your use of the water heater and your iron in order for you to lessen your cost. So if you know how much is being consumed by a certain product or a certain system, then you know now, or you can identify opportunities on how you can reduce the use of energy, and in turn the cost of pay that you pay for using that energy. So it gives us a better understanding on the current level of energy utilization of households and business organizations. So it identifies behavioral change opportunities or technical opportunities in evaluating the operation of energy using components and systems. So it ensures compliance to legal and regulatory requirements, particularly dun sa Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. So right now, for households, not really that much of a problem, but for establishments, commercial establishments, then you have to comply with the act. So basically, you have to do an energy audit in order for you to know how much that you are using and to report that improvements that you are doing so that you are compliant to the act. So it provides the financial information regarding the energy savings opportunities in order to integrate this into the household or organizational decision making. So basically, if you already know where to change and you know the opportunities and identify the ways or the mechanisms that you can change it, now you can identify how much you need, and you can identify how much you need to put into the budget and when you can put into the budget. So if you cannot change, for example, your air condition now because you don't have the financial capability to do it, then you can budget it. So you can assign a certain amount to uh, monthly. So let's say our goal is in a year we have to change our air conditioning. So you can actually compute that if the cost that you're amortizing or trying to save or trying to amortize your air conditioning unit would be the same as the cost that you're paying for your electricity, then you can actually see, or you can actually um, find that compromise between getting or doing energy efficiency and doing or having the capability to do it. So it's part of, it can be part of your decision making as well. So what are the levels of energy audit? So we have the preliminary walkthrough and the detailed audit. So the preliminary walkthrough audit is a micro audit. So it only involves the tracking and analysis of your purchased energy for a fixed period of time. So it can be for example, if you're a big office, it can only be for the accounting. For example, if you're a factory, it can be for only your welding machine. It can only be for your bending machine. You can track only this equipment. So that's a preliminary audit. It's a walkthrough, a micro audit. The detailed audit is a macro audit. So normally you take into consideration your purchase and generated energy. So you have to know how much for example, you are using solar, how much solar is taking away or avoiding the cost of your grid electricity, and how much you are actually purchasing from the grid. So it looks at all your energy balances, your input and output. Example, you use um, uh, a heater or a pump or what else, an elevator. So you know if that elevator is actually using more at a certain period of time or using less at a certain period of time as well. So this one is for the detailed audit or the macro audit. you try to do the audit for the entire organization. So all the energy flows between departments and between offices are taken into account. As compared to the walkthrough, you can only look at lighting, you can only look at your air conditioning, etc. So it's a micro audit. So practical methodology. So in terms of doing an energy audit, these are actually what you need to ask yourself when you do the audit. What framework do you use? So it's there are four main questions or primary questions that you just have to ask yourself. So even if you don't go through the actual process of doing your audit, but if you can answer these questions, then you're actually doing a partial audit already. So the question is, how and where does energy enter the facility or system or specific equipment? Is it a grid electricity? Does it come from a generator? Does it come from solar? So how does energy enter the facility? Is it transport, etc.? Where does it go? And how is the energy being used? So you can say, where does the energy go? It goes into air cons. How is the energy being used? So the aircon is used for cooling. So maybe you can open the windows instead of doing the cooling. So where does now the energy go? The the energy for the air conditioning go? It goes somewhere else. So you can actually look at where the energy that you are consuming goes to. So are there variances between the input energy and the uses? So if you put in, let's say, 10 kilowatt hours of energy into a bulb, and you measure the output of the bulb, it's only, let's say, a very very dim light, then there is a variance, there is a loss in terms of your bulb. So the bulb may be already malfunctioning. There are already losses. So you may need to replace the bulb in order for you to get the maximum productive use for that bulb. So there are variances or there are losses in your equipment or in your components that can affect how efficient you are. So how can energy be used more effectively or efficiently? What process or equipment operation can generate the greatest savings? So this is the opportunities that will be um, or the energy opportunities or or interventions that can be done in order for you to to reduce your cost. So this is actually the methodology of doing the energy audit. In terms of the process, so even if you just to concretize the process for energy audits, in general, there are four stages. You plan, you collect your data, you analyze the data, and you make recommendations or you report your recommendations. So, step one, you have your introductory meeting to agree on the approach. So, in terms of preparation, you plan how to do the energy efficiency, the energy audit. You talk to the client or you talk to the household. What is the scope? Is it the whole house? Is it just for this bedroom? Is it just for the TV? Is it just for the aircon? And you collect your preliminary data. How much or what is the maximum power or energy that will be required by the refrigerator? Is it 100 kilowatts? Is it 10 kilowatts? How much does each light bulb consume? How many light bulbs do we have? So that's preliminary data. So identify key personnel, and then you schedule your site visit. You do your site visit and develop, before doing your site visit, you develop your baseline measurement plan first, and then you make your audit checklist. Then you do your site audit. You visit the site. you undertake analysis for the practices, and then you make it understandable for your client in terms of doing graphics or doing graphs. Then you develop a final report. So in terms of that, so I'll talk about this more elaborately in the next few slides. So in terms of preparation, in arranging the introductory meeting, so agree on the approach. So is the energy audit preliminary audit or a detailed audit? Is the scope organization wide or just a single department? So that's the approach. You request for specific information. So electricity bills, a minimum of 1 year, historical energy performance if there has been already a an energy audit done, or for some commercial establishments and for some industrial corporations, they actually log or audit the ammeter which is attached to each component or each equipment. So there is a performance information that may be available in terms of the metering logbooks. So these are subject to availability. Now you also have to ask what is the list of equipment that you want to audit. What are your process diagrams? Is there a single line diagram? How is every equipment, or how is your lighting, how is your air conditioning connected? How many occupants? What is the gross floor area of the house or the establishment? And others. How many windows that you have? If the windows are facing south. So these are the specific information that you really need to ask your client or to observe from your site visit. So is the roof made of ceramic tiles or galvanized iron sheets? So it will affect the temperature of the dwelling. So there are some implications to certain what do you call this materials and certain uh, methodologies that were used for building for example, your house. So identify the key personnel. So if you're going to look at HVAC systems, then you get an HVAC expert. If you get if you're going to do heating and steam in the industrial setting, then you get somebody who's familiar with steam systems. So try to get people who are qualified in doing a particular system or energy cost center. So, for example, a data center expert would do computers and stuff. So you don't need a steam expert to do a guy who can do an IT data center energy audit. So in terms of planning, so before doing your site visit, try to review available literature. So what are the best practices that you have to look at, or that has to be looked at in terms of the specific sector or business activity? So if it's let's say a hospital, then it's district cooling or district heating, not just electricity and lighting, but cooling and heating would be a very big um, contributor to your energy use. So measurement planning. So you plan what equipment do you have? Do you have data loggers? Do you have temperature sensors? You have clamp meters? You have multimeters, etc. So uh, you also have to look at the scope of the work that you're going to do. Does it need permanent metering, or just maybe a quick instantaneous reading? What instruments will be needed? Does the scope of the what do you call this, the project or the intervention action be um, for a long duration or a short duration? How do you collect the results then? can you use it, or does your equipment throw it to the cloud, or do you have to go to the facility in order for you to download your information manually? So this has to be planned, and this has to be coordinated with your client, or your if it's internal, with your office mates. So these are the type of um, instruments that may be required for you in order for you today to do your analysis. But if you're doing a preliminary walkthrough only, maybe most of the systems will, or most of these instruments will not be needed. You may just be needing a multimeter or a light meter. So it doesn't really need so much technology to be able to do this. So these instruments are actually more being used for detailed energy audits. So in particular, um, one important item here is getting a data logger. So that you won't be trying to get several readings at one time. You just have to attach your data logger and in your sensors, and it takes the reading automatically for you. So an example of doing an energy audit, or I'll just give the example later. So let's go on with the discussion first. So um, part of the planning as well is to analyze current and past performance, so you can understand the profile that is that has been going on in the client's office or in the client's household. So, oh, sorry, this is not measurement planning, it's billing data analysis. So if you can get your Meralco or your distribution utility bill, um, you can do billing analysis as well. So 1 year data for your billing analysis would be the best. So you formulate a site visit agenda in your audit checklist. So develop a schedule in order for you to be focused in what you're going to do, and you won't forget to do anything. So if you want to measure, for example, the air conditioning, you found out that from your data, from the past data of the company, um, the air conditioning is the one that spikes. So you have to put it in your checklist in order for you to be checked that, or to won't so that you won't forget to check that air conditioning unit. So it is for you to focus and not waste any time, because particularly if it's for industrial and for in commercial purposes that you're going to do the audit, um the people, you may inconvenience, or you may disrupt the flow of work in that company. So this is your monthly Meralco bill. So the Meralco bill for residential um, customers is different from your commercial and for your industrial. So the rates are also different. So yeah, we have to take into account uh, the rate that they're paying, and if it's a commercial rate, if they have time of use adjustments, etc. So you have to look at those items. So this is an example of a week, the load profile of a company for a week. So if you look at it from Monday to Sunday, there are there are spikes, or there are changes in the load profile. For example, on Monday, um, during the afternoon, there is a very low spike maybe I think this is around 3 p.m. You don't find it on Tuesdays. On Thursdays, the spike is on 1 p.m. On Fridays, during the middle or during lunchtime, nobody uses your electricity. On weekends, it is very, very much lower. So knowing um your demand or your load, you know if you know when to implement or to intervene in your or to do your energy efficiency action or program. So maybe on a Tuesday or on a Friday, instead of doing the tasks you do on a Thursday, you shift it to Monday. So it's load shifting. So you do the task that you're doing maybe at 2 p.m. in 2 p.m. in the afternoon. You change it to Monday at 3 p.m. to cover this load drop in load. So interventions will actually be um, based on how you look at the profiles and the usage patterns of the client or the company. So before proceeding to the site, during the day of the site visit or right before the site visit, check that the necessary equipment will be available. So, and operating properly is properly calibrated, you have charged it, memory cards are there, sensor probes are complete in order for you to ensure that there are no inaccuracies and no mistakes. It's very hard to go back and forth in doing your energy audit. What if you're based in Manila and you're doing an energy audit in Pampanga? So it is not that easy to go back and forth. And it also gives you an overhead cost in terms of transport. So ensure that the organization or household has been notified and provided approval on the conduct of the energy audit. So try to notify the organization before you go, maybe 3 or 4 days before, in order for them not to be inconvenienced or disrupted when you do your audit. Safety should always be a priority. So wear the appropriate clothing and use uh, proper personal protection equipment. So minimum here would be what do you call this, non-conductive gloves and maybe a hard hat. So non-conductive gloves because if you are going to connect sensors to let's say a distribution panel or a pump, then you may be electrocuted because of the high current rating of this equipment. So it is better to be safe rather than sorry. So try to use personal protective gear. In conducting the visit, during the visit, so these are the levels of how well um, the company has their energy policy or energy management policy. So if you look at level 1, there is no explicit policy, no energy management or any formal delegation. There is no promotion of energy efficiency, etc. So on the 4th level, there's a comprehensive system already. There's an energy management system that is put into automatically that is put into action. You train your personnel in order for them to be very adept or very open to doing energy efficiency and conservation practices, etc. So you can use this matrix in order for you to gauge if there is already an energy policy within your household or within your organization that you're doing the energy audit for. So conducting a site visit. So for buildings, there are different things to check. For example, um, there are broken windows, there are broken doors, there are holes in the roof, inadequate insulation, the light fixtures are too high, air conditioning casements are too high. So there are things to check. Typical opportunities, um, we identify which areas are always occupied, and you can put people in those areas, or you know how much the number of people will be there in order for you to put in your cooling and your heating. Other opportunities here is that if your building is north facing, then you don't need or you yeah, you don't need sunshades to put on your windows. You can use your natural light in order for you to lessen your use of internal lighting, because the sun is not actually directly heating your building. So the heat coming from the sun is not affecting the windows, or entering through your windows. So in terms of air conditioning, there's not so much effect if your windows are north facing. But if it's in the south, then um, it is always being hit by the rays of the sun. So basically, you need sunshades, you need different interventions in order for you to lessen the effect of the sun um, for your building. So in terms of pitfalls, some building interventions are actually disruptive. It can change actually the way that you do business. So another pitfall is that if you do the retrofitting and then you don't do your maintenance and your training for personnel, and your personnel do not know how to use the system, so that's also another pitfall. So it entails capacity building and maintenance applications as well. So for lighting, so um, normally for lighting, it's really how to control how much lighting that you need in a certain area. So are the light switches accessible? Um, are all the lights controlled by one switch alone, or several switches? So I have an anecdote for this lighting. It actually happened in the Department of Energy. So this is about the inaccessible light switches, and that the light switches are controlling several of the lights. So in one department or one area in the DOE, in the old building, one of the light switches controlled the whole lighting for the half the floor. So even if you're the only one on the floor, you switch on the light, everything lights up, even if you're the only one there. So one time, we were doing a consult, or we had a meeting, and then we when we finished the meeting, we were just cleaning up, and we there were only two of us, so the entire floor was lighted, and and uh, there was nobody else in the room, so the air conditioning as well was on, as well as the lighting. We were just surprised when we had our backs to the door. Somebody turned off the light, so everything was dark. So we yelled out, and we said, "Ano ba yan? Sino ka ba? Bakit mo pinatay yung ilaw?" Then somebody answered with a very, very deep voice. Eh kasi kayo lang dalawang nansan. Bakit ba nakabukas lahat ang ilaw nyo? And when we turned, it was Secretary Angelo Reyes that was telling us to turn off the lights because everything was switched on. So um, that is one also another way of controlling lighting. So you can cut the circuits into several areas, so that when you're only one alone in that area, you can turn whichever light the only lights that are needed. So there are automated systems for building management that are being used. So in some areas there are actually motion sensors. So it only switches on if you move. So when you go into the room, it switches on. So that's one of the ways that energy efficiency technology is being utilized. However, there's also a downside to that motion sensor. Um, uh, there are times when some people are working on their computer and they are not moving. So after 5 minutes, they're not moving, they're just thinking, the light turns off. So you have to move a little bit just in order for the lights to turn on again. So there are some idiosyncrasies in the systems that you really have to look at. So another area that is of particular interest to particularly for Filipinos is the heating and ventilation and air conditioning. So in most Philippine offices, there are only two temperatures inside the offices. It's either very hot or freezing. So if you go if you go into the offices, it's either the temperatures in the air conditionings are or the air conditionings are off, or they are at 16 degrees Celsius. So the recommendation here is that for heating and ventilation, you try to match the amount of the heating or air conditioning to the number of occupants in the room. So that is how, or that is the way that the air conditioning unit should be sized. So basically, you just don't say that, okay, you have a room, you want to buy a 1 horsepower air conditioning, but you never measured how much or how big the room is. And no, you did not also measure how many people are in the room, or how many people will be using the room. So maybe a 1/4 horsepower would have sufficed rather than buying a 1 horsepower air conditioning. So these are some points to consider when you're looking at the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Another part here is that um, uh, some systems really have to do or have to be very convenient for the people in order for them to um, uh, adopt the technology. So if you're making it a little bit more inconvenient and difficult for them to be using the technology, then the uptake will not be very good. So these are the references that I used. So thank you for listening.
Right. Thank you very much, Sir Erwin, for that very practical and at the same time technical discussion. So we have here some questions from our participants. And since we have a bit more time to discuss this, is it okay if we ask our participant here to unmute themselves and open their camera so that we can see, of course, and maximize the space that we have here this afternoon. So I'd like to call first to the first person who sent a question, Arceu Honculada. So, sir or ma'am, Arceu. Sige, so basahin ko na lang. You said that despite the passage of the law on RE, still the renewable energy efforts is reducing. My question is what is in the law that either be omitted, or is there a specific policy that must be added? So that's the first question. And the second question is, what are the factors that potentially hinder us from shifting to renewable energy despite the passage of the law? So, Sir Erwin.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, in terms of the um what do you call this, the RE law, um the uptake of RE is, even if it's increasing, the share of coal, of fossil fuels is still increasing as well. So
Mhm.
it's really a matter of, it may be increasing in terms of contribution, but if you look at the numbers, it is staying the same. The contribution is staying the same because coal is still there. So in order for us to really transition to renewable energy and to cleaner technologies, um, we should, gradually stop using coal. So we're not saying that we stop to completely at once at one time. We cannot do that because we have to consider the economy of the country as well. But I think investments in fossil fuel plants should be lessened gradually in order for us to ensure that renewable energy and energy efficiency would have a higher uptake.
All right. Um, the next question is, Sir Arceo, before I jump into the second question, do you have any follow-up or nasagot naman po yung tanong?
Nasagot naman po, ma'am.
All right, thank you po sa question. The second question is from Rolly Nunes. Is banning coal and oil the only solution?
Uh, Not really. Well, as I said, we have to consider that we have an economy to consider. So we have to support the economy. So it's not really banning. We have to reduce. So I think if what we could do is that, um, if we look at the full cost accounting of coal, of oil, of renewable energy, we can see that coal is actually more expensive. Oil is actually more expensive than renewable energy. For one, they have a fuel cost. Renewable energy does not. After you're done with your capital cost, then you have no other investment cost. But for coal and for oil, it's still there. So it's not really banning it, but it's really diversifying the energy mix more, in the sense that you give more emphasis or you give more priority to using renewable energy rather than just using coal and oil. So I
All right.
think we are actually doing this right now. We are trying to have a green energy auction that incentivizes our renewable energy developers and project owners.
All right. I think the takeaway there is that we need to expand our market, no, for um, energy resources para mas mataas din yung competition between the people who are in that industry, so that we can have more choices, diba? And much more better services. All right, so
Yep.
our third question came from Sir Arnold Tarobago. Has a study been done to estimate the total energy use of government institutions like buildings, offices, official vehicles, and the possible energy savings that can be achieved if government implemented a strict internal energy conservation program? So
Uh,
medyo ano no, medyo ideal and dream yung ganong pagsunod ng government. So I think Sir Erwin has some answers to that.
yeah, actually, there have been preliminary studies already that has been done. These are in particular yung, as I said, air conditioning, lighting, at saka the use of renewable energy for the building. So I think a lot of the buildings ng government agencies have already uh, what you call this, bought or installed a energy efficient or building management system. So one example would be Pishard. Pishard has a very large roof system that was installed by PNOC. So I think NEA also has one. So they've also been doing energy conservation and energy efficiency efforts, like turning off air conditioning at a certain time of the day. And they have also been doing what you call this, a um or they're trying to do building management um to monitor all their consumption in terms of have uh, deploying data loggers into their buildings and institutions.
All right, thank you, Sir Erwin. The next question, or may additional pa po ba si Sir Arnold?
Ano lang, thank you, Jessa. Part kasi dun sa, hindi ko lang siguro na-clarify kanina, pero when I said the government, hindi lang po yung national agencies, national offices, pero including po yung mga regional and local governments. Meron na po bang study done to yung kanilang energy use, pati sa mga, ano ba, mga ang tawag dito, yung mga nawawala yung word sa akin. Basta yung mga mayor's offices, etc. Yung mga ganun po. Salamat.
Yeah. For the LGUs, meron naman po, pero hindi pa ganun ka-prevalent. Actually, that's what we are trying to do now. I think many of the distribution utilities that may have been a problem, or that may have a problem with the uptake of renewable energy and energy efficiency, medyo na-force na rin sila to do it kasi yung mga LGU has no capacity to do it, but they turn to the distribution utilities to help them do that kind of study and do that kind of what do you call this, a reduction in their energy. So that is also the reason why several LGUs would like to do use street lights that are powered by solar energy. So they see that the cost savings that they can have would be very large for their municipality. So in terms of planning for energy, yun yung wala pa, sir. But in terms of small actions and small interventions, meron naman, hindi naman siya wala. Sporadic lang, not yet widespread.
Salamat po.
Alright. I think doon tayo papasok, no, as citizens of this country, we have to pressure these people na may existing na tayo na batas, and these people that we've elected should follow this law, no. The next question came again from Sir Arceo. Is energy audit optional to a household or to a company or building? Is there a unit in DOE or any government institution who should institutionalize the process? So I think this is somehow connected to the question of Sir Arnold. So is it optional daw po ba?
For households, yes, it is optional. Pero for companies, hindi na siya optional. Pero the renewable the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act already mandates that a company or a small business that has a certain threshold consumption of energy should report their what we call an energy consumption and conservation report. So the ones who will do these ECCRs are actually your certified energy conservation officers or certified energy managers. So these certified energy managers or officers can already be internal to the company. So
Mhm.
it can be your engineering head, it can be somebody assigned from your engineering, it can be somebody assigned from your maintenance, etc. So they just have to be accredited as an energy manager or an energy conservation officer.
All right.
So is
Thank you,
there a
Sir
unit?
Erwin.
Yeah, in yung unit sa DOE, there's EPINB, yung ano yun, Electric Power Industry Management Bureau at saka yung Energy Utilization and Management Bureau. They are the ones who are handling energy efficiency within the DOE.
Okay.
Ah,
Sige. So, Sir Arceo, you want to say something po?
yeah, follow up lang dun sa
All
ano.
right.
Sir, you said na dapat may yung parang certified na yung sinasabi mong certified somebody na manager.
Yes, sir.
So if that's an internal audit, should there be a check and balance? Kasi nga the law is very very emphatic on reducing the tawag nito yung dependency to coal or fossil fuel based energy.
Mhm.
Meron bang like check and balance kasi as you all know no, pwede namang sabihin ng certified manager na yan na sige i-ano natin na bumaba kunwari yung ano that's we're just talking ano in reality ganun talagang may mga nangyayaring ganun talaga sa mga
Mhm.
LGUs and I've seen it already.
Yeah.
Is there a check and balance? Does the unit that you said in the Department of Energy have that also check and balance na ano for all these institutions or
Yes,
offices?
sir. Yes, sir. Actually, I think that's what you're trying to do now. What are the mechanics of doing the reporting and what are the mechanics of doing the check and balances? So, I from the point kasi of the from 2019 in April when it was signed into law, it was the establishments and the DOE and the other government institutions were given 3 years to transition into to submitting those reports. So basically ngayon, right now, we are still voluntary in a sense. So in 3 years, kailangan magkaroon ka na ng accredited na personnel, kailangan ka ng magkaroon ng accreditation body, kailangan ka ng magkaroon ng third party na titingin or magko-confirm or magva-validate dun sa mga submittals na ginagawa within the DOE. So it is part and parcel of the transition period of the law. So kung I think the DOE is open naman to private sector organizations to say how they're going to or how they're going to assist the DOE in doing that. I think there was a recent forum already on one of the department orders that they were going to issue in terms of how to do the what you call this the audits at saka yung submittals of the reports. So um, I think it is now in transition that the DOE is doing that.
Okay, thank you po.
Okay po.
All right. So for our last question, um, from Sir Gerardo Castro, solar and wind power have been introduced in our country, but the prices of electricity is still very high. Why? And does this renewable energy campaign just a smokescreen?
Yeah. Hindi lang po solar and wind power ang introduced in the country. It's actually all the renewables, solar, hydro, ocean, ano pa, geothermal, biomass have been introduced. Hindi naman siya smoke screen yung campaign. The prices of electricity are in the country is high because our electricity is not subsidized by the government. What the EPIRA did was to take off the subsidies from the tariffs that we are paying. So compared to let's say Indonesia, siguro in Indonesia I think it's around 40, hindi lang 30-40% of what they're paying is actually subsidized. So mas mababa yung kuryente talaga na lalabas dun sa ano nila. For us, the market is one, it's deregulated, competitive yung generation, meron tayong sariling spot market. So bakit pa rin mataas yung cost? One, failure yung competition. So if we look at the competition now, sila pa rin yung nag-aaway in the market. Si Aboitiz, si San Miguel, sila pa rin. So if the small players, actually our small developers and owners, kung makakapasok sila at kaya nilang makipagsabayan or magbibigyan sila ng chance ng government makipagsabayan dun sa market at hindi predatory, hindi sila kakainin ng buhay ng mga malalaking mga companies, then bababa yung kuryente kasi kaya nilang magbigay ng For example, ang coal right now is around 3 pesos. Solar can fight that 3 pesos at around 4 pesos. Konting-konti lang yung difference But if you really push it, kung malaking-malaki yung installation, kaya niya pang less than 3 pesos. So it can actually fight. The only problem is that the big generation companies, even if it's renewable, are the ones that are there. So nandun pa rin yung what you call this, yung system na hindi pag nagkakaroon ng matinong competition within the market. So that's the main reason kung bakit mataas pa rin siya even given na may IPIRA at given na merong RE law. So that's one of the things that we really have to look at. Talagang kailangan natin mag-compete yung mga hindi lang 3-4 na player yung nandyan. Kailangan maraming player para bumaba yung kuryente.
Alright, maraming salamat po Sir Erwin Serafica at maraming salamat din po sa mga nag-send ng mga katanungan. So ngayong hapon napag-usapan natin yung iba't ibang aspect ng renewable energy at yung energy efficiency sa ating bansa. To be more specific, napag-usapan natin yung economic aspect, yung legislative, yung health at construction, and of course yung main topic natin, which is the energy audit. So sa economic aspect, nalaman natin na isa ang residential sa highest energy consumer ng ating bansa, followed by industrial buildings. And Philippines is also one of the highest rates of cost ng electricity sa buong Asia. And we are also one of the contributor ng carbon CO2 emissions sa buong mundo dahil of course the carbon emission offset ng mga bigger countries are being situated here in the Philippines, the factories and the production of their brands. On the policy trust and reform agenda, people actually who are in the position are basically saying one thing and doing another. So there's really a big problem on that, And we as active citizens, we need to push through and gather ourselves para makausap at ma-pressure itong mga taong inelect natin na binigyan natin ng kapangyarihan na they should do something, and not say one thing and do another. And also Philippine energy efficiency on the part on economic aspect, we can actually unlock 66% of the market potential when we do more efforts on the energy efficiency in our country. On the legislative side, napag-usapan natin yung Republic Act 11285, which is the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. From government energy performance up to incentive. So from the government institutions no, na nagbibigay at nagre-regulate ng ganitong batas up to the incentives na binibigay ng gobyerno sa mga small businesses and of course the big companies as well na sumusunod sa batas na ito. At na-touch up din natin sa Q&A yung person in charge just in case that we want to address this issue no, sa isang specific LGU or sa isang specific company who are not following this law. And we've also talked about managing energy use through a change of mindset and behavior na point out kanina ni Sir Erwin no na matagal na nating pinapractice yung energy conservation. In fact, yung mga behavior such as yung pagtatago ng plastic na nakuha natin sa grocery store, yung pagpatay ng ilaw kapag hindi ginagamit ay naipasa sa atin ng mga older generations. And we just need to maybe expand on that and dig deeper and bring it to our younger generations. And I think one important thing na na-highlight doon sa legislative part of the discussion is that we did not follow the convention here in the Philippines to mitigate climate change. And this is why also young people are forming or their own groups no, to say that we need to act on this law. Hindi lang siya palamuti o hindi lang siya dokumento na idadagdag natin sa mga shelves ng Senate at ng Kongreso. And napag-usapan din natin yung health no na health aspect ng energy at na nag-point out kanina si Sir Erwin ng mga benefits na pwedeng makapaloob no when we do more energy efficiency. It can actually improve well-being no. And napag-usapan din of course yung tips no na pwede nating gamitin kagaya ng yung disenyo ng ating bahay, malalaking bintana, maliwanag na bahay. So things like that, no? Simple efforts na pwede nating gawin when we do construct our own homes. And of course, lastly, yung energy audit, no? Medyo technical yung discussion ng last part, but I think it is very important no, to analyze energy usage patterns and give direction kung paano natin i-optimize yung energy consumption natin. And I think yung important dito ay makakatipid tayo when we do really exercise the energy audit. So with that, maraming salamat.